back to the Brown Paint podcast, everyone. Today we have Roshan Nausad, also known as Desi Boy on Instagram, who is a social media content creator, lifestyle blogger, and activist for embracing and encouraging self-acceptance and acceptance of others. How beautiful! Oh my gosh, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so excited to have you on. Rosh and I have been friends for a while, and this has been a long time coming. So it's really exciting. You're on mute, by the way.
Oh, sorry. I'm not very. Oh, there we go. It's back on. Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being invited onto this platform, being invited to this conversation. And thank you for this great opportunity. I really appreciate it. Brown Paint or my friend Arthur.
So I just want to talk about your life story. You have a very interesting one. So today we're going to learn all things Desi Boy. Where did Desi Boy, Roshan, where were you born? Tell me the beginning of your story.
Okay. So I was born in India, in Old Delhi. And so I was there from like 1998 to 2002, and then I was adopted in 2002. So I was adopted by two Australian couple, my mum and her husband. And then I basically grew up in Australia all my life since then. And it was a bit of a weird transition because I had to learn a new language. I had to learn the new customs of the country and the way that people did things. And, as a kid, you absorb everything so quickly. So like learning English was super easy at the time. But when you grow up, it's a little bit harder to learn a new language. So I picked up things quite quickly. I did Steiner school for the early years of my education. So I did Steiner Kinder, and then I did Steiner primary school up until grade 2, and then I went into mainstream. The reason I changed over, which now I regret actually, is because it really allowed me to be myself. Steiner is a great form of education, and it helps children develop in their own time, in their own way. And it's all learning through visualization and creativity and play. So it's not your traditional tertiary education where you sit down and you read a book and you have to put, pen to paper kind of a situation. You do it through colors and music and song. And so it was a really great way for me, especially as an adopted kid at that time, learning a new language, grasping a new vocabulary skill. It was really fantastic because even then I was very vocalized in my actions in terms of being creative, love to paint, love to draw, love to dance. And so my mum obviously, saw that would be a best fit for me. And then when I transitioned into mainstream education system, now looking back and at the time as well, I decided I had made a mistake, but it would already been too late by then. I'd already, made some friends and I was okay with it. But I found it a lot more trickier. And I did have to do kindy twice in the same level due to my ability to have to learn English at the same rate as everybody else, because at that time all the kids spoke English and I was still learning. So my mum gave me that extra year to stay at kindy and learn all that stuff. So but that period, my mum helped me stay in my culture. So I did Mohiniyattam Indian dance, and I did that up until I was 5 years old. And in that community, it allowed me to make friends that looked like me, because everyone else in my life outside of that circle didn't, and everyone else was Aussie. I went to school with kids that didn't look like me, so it was great to have that safe space where I could feel like I was belonging, and my mummy really helped me find that space, and allowed me to do that because she knew how much my culture meant to me. Even at that early age, I was always very vocal about being a part of my culture. So yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I don't think I knew you went to Steiner school.
I did, yeah. But I also, I used to dance and do Mohiniyattam practices and rehearsals at Erasmus. I don't know if you know that school, but Erasmus is also another form of Steiner system education. So it's again, it's that same dance-based, creative drawing and music and visualization learning, and also the actual school themselves. Their dance school or their dance lessons, or the institute or whatever, actually taught Mohiniyattam. So it was a very inclusive school, because there was a lot of South Asians at that school, and it was very diverse. They allowed that form of dance to be taught at the school as well. So that's why I was so successful in my development, but also I'm sure the other kids as well, because it was so inclusive.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that sounds incredible. And I seriously wish I went to a alternative school or Steiner school or something, because I felt like my schooling experience, I really struggled. Like I think it was so hard to just absorb information through textbooks or whiteboards or just listening for me. I was always such a creative kid like you. I feel like really robbed of my talents, because I feel like I could have gotten so much more out of myself if I went to a Steiner school being a creative kid. And I feel like being a parent that can identify your kids' talents at a young age and identify especially a creative kid is really important, because um, yeah, so like the fact that your mum could like see what you needed as an individual and think, okay, we're going to put him into a Steiner school, is like props to your mum. Like that's amazing. What age, sorry, I think I missed it, what age were you adopted at?
So I was 4, so it was in October of 2002. So I was adopted at Holy Cross Orphanage. So this is an orphanage that obviously, tons of children come into the doors, and they obviously are either street children, or they're children that have been languished, or children that have been found on the street. And so basically, either the police drive around in those local areas in the precinct, and of their particular establishment, and they go and find these children that could possibly be homeless. And in my case, I was found on the street as a 3-year-old child. And so then the police saw, obviously, then me, little baby, and picked me up. And so that's how that whole process worked out. And so they make a file report, they get a photo of the child, and from there, they're able to determine, how to best formulate a story in order to put the child up for adoption, or all that sort of stuff. So it's quite complex, but it sounds quite easy when I'm explaining it. I'm not really saying it in a complex way, but it happens so quickly, but it's very, very complex, because although India is still developing in terms of file keeping, it's still corrupt, and so a lot of files go missing. And in my case, I still don't have a lot of my files either, whether it's lack of upkeep, or just lack of evidence to hold within the file of my particular case. But a lot of children, sometimes they go, and when they turn 18, because when you turn 18, you get to actually have a letter or a document that describes everything about the processes of your adoption. And so sometimes children don't find any information in there. Sometimes they find everything they need. So it just depends on the individual child, of who and what took place in that moment of when the child was picked up to when the child was being adopted. So it's very, very complicated. And in my situation, I don't have a whole lot. It's more just memory for me, that I have 2 older siblings that were sisters, and then an older brother. So I was one of 4 kids. My mother had 4 children. My elder sister, she was married off, and then everything else leading from there, I have no idea. So it's more just recollection and memory that I know. And so that whole process has always been, and that memory has always stayed with me, because it's a really big deal for me. And I look forward to hopefully one day finding my family in the future. Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, sorry, that was going to be my next question. Do you remember, like, how much of India do you remember? And
Yeah.
yeah, how much?
Yeah, so I would say I'll say a few things that I on here, but I may not say everything. But yeah, it's I do remember quite a lot. It's definitely with just like landmarks, you know. I know that my family would live near the Yamuna River. I know that we lived near a mango tree. I knew that we lived you know, almost like a flat land kind of landscape. I almost drowned as a baby. And so my elder sister, she saved me from one of the monsoon seasons that we were having. And so I remember all of that. And as a child, you usually don't, as an adult, you don't think that a child can remember all that. But some children do withdraw their trauma. And then other children work in a different way where they do withhold or do remember their lived experiences and do want to try and maintain that memory because it's a part of who they are. So every child is so different and every trauma is dealt differently. So for me, I've remembered it, and that's not by choice. It's just how my genetic and my makeup brain chemistry works. And so I'm actually very grateful that I remember it, although it be traumatic. I'm just glad that I can remember those bits and pieces of my birth family, because I know a lot of kids who are adopted don't remember anything of where they were, who they are in terms of where they came from. And so I'm very privileged in that sense. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. And you're so right about you almost rather remember it, even though it was traumatic, because at least it gives you clues on how to heal yourself.
Yeah.
Um, if you had to sum up those 4 years of India in one word or one feeling, what would it be?
Hmm. I'd probably just say confusion. Like it's all just very confusing because I have all these bits of memories and I honestly don't know which time, which piece of these memories fit into that one timeline. And so memories that I remember from this particular event and this particular event, it's like, well, which one comes first? And for me, that is what confuses me. And so because there's no concrete evidence of anything that I remember, all I know is that it's genuine memory because I've always remembered the same events from day one. And my family, actually, my auntie, my mum's sister, did a great job at always voice recording on those little tape recorders of me when I was 4 years old, of talking about my experiences and talking about what I went through. So, you know, that being proof from then to now, I know that those memories are genuine and that, you know, I know a lot of children and even adults when they've had trauma, they remember bits and pieces and then whatever they don't remember, because it's traumatic, they sort of formulate this alternate timeline of what could have happened. And so that's no fault of anyone's. It's just the way the brain works. So in order for my family to then one day, if I wanted to look for my family, which I do, I'd still have those pieces of evidence in recollecting those memories. And I know that they'll be genuine because it was when I was just coming to Australia. So that was when it was fresh.
Wow. And your
Mm.
adoptive family sounds very supportive, and very like smart in the way they went about that, because that's like, wow. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not an adoptive parent, but I wouldn't have thought to do that. So that's very smart.
yeah.
That's again like invaluable information that you could, take to trauma therapy one day or whatever. Have you engaged in any sort of mental health therapy or like trauma therapy or recollection therapy or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, like since day one, like my mum has worked really hard in helping me, you know, develop a better self-confidence in terms of my mental stability, especially with well, children in general, but also in my case, adopted kids. Like we have gone through so much life experience in such little time. And so for a kid's head, it's like trying to grasp it all is so overwhelming. And so I would always, you know, mum would always find me crying and always, you know, being sad and everything and wishing that I wasn't adopted and everything. Like these are things that, you know, not every adopted kid goes through, but quite a few adopted kids go through that, almost like that withdrawal period and that almost like homesick feeling of like I miss where I was kind of thing, you know. And so for me, like I went through multiple and countless therapists or children, special people who specialized in children who were adopted, or people that I spoke to about my anxiety or my bad dreams and all that sort of stuff, right through the point that I came here to even going to high school. I still had moments where, and even now, like I still go and see special help in terms of psychology or something like that, just to keep me on track. Because, and I'm not ashamed of it, and no one should be ashamed of it, especially in the brown community when we stigmatize everything so much in terms of, and I hate the fact that we call it mental health, because it's like, what it is, it's a brain disease. We forget that, like, it's something that we can't control. And when people say mental, it's like it's this old fashioned way of thinking. It's like, oh, you're going insane, you're crazy. I think what we should call it, or rather refer to, is it's a brain disorder. It's a brain problem. It's something that we can't control, that we've, through experiences that we've had, it's developed in this way and it's manifested it itself. And so I wish that people would stop seeing it as such a bad thing, and that people are going crazy. And it's okay to ask for help. It's even hard for me to go and ask for help, especially for my, to my mum, or even getting myself to that place of, like, if I'm really deep in like a depression or anxiety or something, I eventually get there, but it takes time. Yeah.
That's so awesome. And it's, if that's like, something that's happened at a very early age, it's not something that's you're gonna like just heal in one spurt. So it's really awesome that you've just continually maintained the practice of seeking help and continuing that, because it's a life journey, right? It's not just a one-stop fix-all kind of situation.
Yes.
I'd love to talk a bit more about your adoptive family and your relationship with them, because it sounds like they were really supportive and they did all the right things. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've actually interviewed another adoptive South Asian person on this podcast, and she didn't have such a lucky experience with her adoptive family. They were supportive in many ways, but also very abusive in many other ways. So I'd love to hear about what your opinion is, or like what the good things that your parents did, and advice for parents listening that are looking to adopt, and what are the right and wrong things that you should be doing if you're adopting a child.
So, well, what I would say to young kids that are adopted in that whole journey of whether it's self-discovery or it's just being at peace with yourself of where you are, because it's very, very tricky and it's so hard, and you grow up with multiple identities, I suppose, because you're trying to be that perfect kid for your new family, and then you're also trying to discover who you are for yourself, and then you're wearing a different person on yourself when you're with your friends and all that sort of stuff as a kid, as you're developing into a full human being, I suppose. It's so multifaceted. And so for young people that are listening, and also parents who have adopted kids or are wanting to adopt kids, I think I would definitely say, like, for the parents, really make sure that you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, because like having a child biologically, it is a life commitment. It is not something that is an accident. It is not something that you can take lightly. And even more than ever, you are choosing. It's not that you accidentally got pregnant. It's you're choosing this life with this other human being that is not your own biologically, and that you want to integrate them into your family. And I think it is so important that if you are, and whether you're brown, black, white, whatever, and you're adopting a child that is not from the same culture from you, you need to do the utmost best to educate yourself on where that child comes from, the country that they come from, and learn and to integrate that culture and their languages as much as you can into that child's life when they come into your new family. I think up until the point where they can decide for themselves whether they want to continue on embracing the or involving themselves in their own community, or maybe they do want to involve in themselves in their own community, that is for them to choose. You don't get to choose that for them, because I have seen countless adoptive parents totally disregard their culture, totally disregard the fact that they're adopted, almost just formulate them into this pretty package and will be like, oh, this is my child, but forget the fact that they have left their whole world. This child has left their whole family behind. This child has forgotten, where they belong. They don't know where they belong. And to formulate this version of themselves so that they can be accommodating for your family, your way of speaking, your language and your culture, that is the most selfish thing that someone could do, in my opinion, as someone that's adopted. And so where I'm privileged is that my mum always encouraged it. And so from day one, so did my auntie, so did my grandma, so did even, my mum's husband, that everyone really just embraced it and allowed me to be myself, and which is Indian, and allowed me to feel those feelings of, I hate being adopted, or I hate being brown, or I hate having parents that don't look like me. It's all these things that, adoptive parents or people who want to adopt kids has to understand, that these are the things that go through with having a child that's, already developed trauma. It's so easy to forget that they're not, your biological child sometimes, because they're almost so much like yourself, because they're your child. They, no matter how they come into this world, they're still your child. And so we still have to nurture those kids protect them and allow them to feel how they feel. And so I say to this young girl, if she's listening, like, it really, really sucks. And I hate the fact that they didn't support you when it mattered. Just remember that you can make your family with whoever you want. It doesn't have to necessarily be the family that adopted you. And if you want them to be, then you both together, all of you as a unit, can work together and make that a relationship. And if it's not able to mend, then you've got to work hard as well to make sure that you allow yourself to trust people and allow yourself to let people in, because I know how hard that can be. So if people love you and there for you, then allow them in. And so, a lot of young kids that are adopted, they have problems with trust issues and all that, letting people love them. And so, when you believe it, allow them, and you will find that you've got this abundance of unconditional love around you. And so that can be your best friends, that can be a school teacher that you trust, that can be, a neighbor that you've, have a great meaningful connection with, that understands you. And, there's so many different avenues that you can make relationships with people that are on your side, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your parents. And that goes for children that are not adopted either. That sometimes your parents are biological and sometimes they don't understand you at all. So I think it's just how it is, and you just work with what you've got, but don't ever, think that you're not valued and you're not important just because you don't feel valued and important to your parents. So just stay strong and continue moving forward and make friends that are like-minded. Because it's so weird because there's so many adopted people out there, but I don't have adopted friends at all. Like, I have one adopted friend, and we're not that common when you actually are adopted. It's so strange. So yeah, it's just, they're everywhere, but they're not anywhere. It's really weird, but just stay positive. That's what I would say overall.
Oh, that is some golden advice. That is like everything you said. Wow. And that's going to help whoever's listening. So thank you for that. So I was just going to say, my gosh, you've been through such a journey in terms of cultural identity.
Yeah.
Like finding like the struggle of just learning about your culture from scratch, and the effort that takes in a Western country where you're quite physically away from your culture and in a
Yeah.
So you've been through a lot in terms of finding your cultural identity, and hearing your journey really humbles me, because as a young South Asian, first generation South Asian person living within a diaspora, I feel like we tend to run away from our culture. So I grew up doing the complete opposite thing that you did growing up.
Yeah.
You were trying to chase down your culture and embrace it. I was doing the opposite, completely trying my hardest to run away from it because I was embarrassed and ashamed of it. So that's really humbling to hear that story.
It's so funny because, being adopted and everything, I really just took my culture by the horns, I guess. And that's very unique to me because everyone's different. I don't know what other people do when in their circumstances of being adopted, but for me, I definitely did take it all the way and embraced it. Yeah, there were, of course, moments, where I was like, oh God, like I'm so different, or like, oh my God, my culture is like so out there. But I feel like because I think the reason I love it so much is because it's such a natural reflection of me. I'm so colorful, I'm so out there, I'm so extroverted. And inherently, the South Asian or even the Southeast Asian cultures are so inherently flamboyant. And whether you want to admit it, whether you don't, it is the fact. It is just, you look at it and all you see is color. And so, when you're seeing your culture being represented as so colorful, and then you're like, well, what's there to be ashamed of? I think it's like so beautiful that it's so in your face and it's so bright. We need bright in the world, and I think that is how I feel, in my opinion. I think that's literally how our people have existed for so long, because our culture really does encompass all this happiness, and it really just takes it on, and it's not ashamed of it inherently. But young people living in the West, like yourself, who are born or not born in the West, with their own biological parents who are also South Asian, who most likely are immigrants, I think young people do take it for granted that they can speak their mother tongue and choose not to.
Yeah.
They can, understand the ins and outs of their customs and the traditions and choose to reflect away from it. And I think it's so interesting because I would die to have that, because I lost that opportunity of rebelling against my culture because I hadn't had that opportunity. My parents are white, my whole family's white except my adoptive sister. And so I suppose it's just like, where else do I find something that I can relate to, and I taught myself from the ground up my own culture. I literally studied Hindi cinema. I watched it all the time. I can sing word for word every song that I love in Hindi, and not being able to fully grasp or understand the language, but like music is a international language. Anyone can love it and appreciate it regardless of it being understandable, and that's the beauty of music. And so when people are like, wow, you're more Indian than me, I can actually take offense to it, because I don't believe I'm more Indian than anyone. I think we're all Indian. I think if I'm talking to an Indian South Asian person and they say that to me, I'm just like, well, you're just as Indian as I am. How you choose to express yourself and how out there and elaborately you choose to express yourself, that is your choice, but that doesn't make you less Indian. And then on the other hand, I've had people that are like, oh, you're trying to be Indian. I'm like, I'm not trying to be Indian anything. I am Indian. I was born in India. I'm from the motherland. It's in my DNA. I just don't understand how I can get double side of the coin. And being on social media, I get that quite a lot. And so I'm so conflicted and I'm so confused by it, because it's like, well, I'm not Indian enough to be Indian, and then I'm not Western enough to be Western, and so you're always finding that, I don't know, like problematic notion of like, God, where do I fit in, and that's not even for adopted kids, that's for people of color in general, trying to grasp where the hell they fit into. And obviously the mainstream norm is to appreciate and undertake and engulf all this westernization of European standards of beauty and lifestyle and desires and wants and needs. But not everyone wants those things, and I certainly am a reflection of the Western way of life because I sound Western, I dress Western, my mannerisms are obviously Western, but at the same time, I'm also very Indian, and I appreciate my culture, and I also represent it, regardless of whether I'm mad about what's going on in my home country. I still represent it regardless of whether I want to or not. Um, and so that doesn't mean to take away that I am not allowed to dislike the things that happen over there. And so that people get confused. It's like, oh, you're so proud of it, but like, look at all the things that happen over there. I'm like, I'm not proud of that. People need to like remember that like there's good sides and bad sides to every country. And no way in hell is there any country that is perfect. We've all had downfalls and we've all had ups. And so when I look at my culture, I think about the colors. I think about the music culture. I think about the amazing textiles and craftsmanship that has been around for centuries in India and around South Asia. So you look at the great things, and that's what you should be proud of, not the fact that women are still not getting paid the same, or women are still don't have the same rights, or children are still on the streets and not having access to education. And those things are real, but you can't get it fixed in one day. And that doesn't mean to say you should hate where you come from and where you are. So yeah, I think it's a learning curve, but being adopted for me, I've always just repelled the whole idea of like becoming too westernized. I'm like the opposite. I'm just like, oh God, I don't want to become too Australian. I'm just like, God, I sounded like so Aussie. I'm dressing a little too Aussie for me. Like I just randomly, sometimes I'll just wear like a whole week. I'll wear Indian clothes full on. Like I don't even care. It's a Monday. I'm going to the grocery store at Woolies and people are looking at me and they're like, what are they doing here? But I don't care because like, why shouldn't I be allowed to wear what I want? I mean, Western clothing has become so normalized that it's like if it's anything else, it's out there. It's like, no, if you go to India, that's literally what people wear. Like it's something that is their regular lounge around clothes, um, so I think we should just be more integrative and understanding and accepting that people can wear what they like, and if it's a reflection of their culture, just because it's not a casual wear for you and it seems elaborate, doesn't mean to say their culture and customs don't consider that to be their loungewear and their comfort clothes. So it's different everywhere.
That's awesome. And can I just say, your Instagram is such a reflection of all of this. I actually think that weirdly, being adopted makes you a really good advocate for embracing your culture because you've had to do that quite literally from scratch. And for me, coming across your page for the first time, I think was like 2018. And seeing a brown person so unapologetically embrace their culture was actually quite triggering for me, because that was before I went through my whole cultural awakening process of really coming to embrace my skin and my culture. So seeing you like fully wearing the kurtas and all of that and the jewelry, and I was just like, what? But it inspired me, and it inspires so many people. How has your journey of cultural identity inspired what you do today with your Instagram?
That's so funny that you said that because, before even I started doing all of that stuff, I was so genuinely surprised that when I saw people on social media or Google embracing our culture the way that, for example, myself or other creative, Desi creatives or South Asian creatives do, I was genuinely gobsmacked too. I was like, what? People actually embrace being brown? Like I was also the same, like because we don't see that stuff in mainstream media of our own community and our own people fully engulfing it and like taking it on board and wanting to be a part of it. It's so disgusting that we're actually surprised by it, that we actually could love our own selves that much and that hard. And it's because of this westernization of telling and through generations of oppression and whitewashing, is that we've been told that it's not okay to embrace who we are. It's so far foreign, to actually accept something that you're actually born as, other than if you're not white. Do you know what I mean? And so it's just like, so crazy. And I, just like you, I also was gobsmacked. And that's what inspired me. Someone else inspired me to do what I do now. And I somehow inspired you, and we inspire other people. So I think it's just it's like a domino effect, you know, the more we see our own people in our community doing it, the more we inspire unconsciously or consciously. And the bigger our community force will get, and we will just take the world on by storm. Like, that is what I'm wanting. And so I just love that I've been able to do that for you. But I was also in the same boat. So I can totally, totally relate that it was pretty surprising to me too.
Wow, that's so awesome. Massive
Yeah.
of inspiration. I love it. I love it.
But yeah, like to your question, like integrating like my culture and everything, it's just, for me, it just comes natural. You know, I just do it. It's not, sometimes I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh God, I am a little bit more self-conscious than normal, you know, and we all get like that. And that can also reflect on how I'm feeling towards my culture that day. So I have a hate and love relationship with my culture too. Sometimes I'm just like, God, get away from me. I just don't want to like be associated with it today. It's too much, right? And then there's other days where I'm just like, oh my God, I love it and I want to fully embrace it. You know, and so that's not even being a part of the South Asian community. I think that's just everyone in general. Sometimes our own selves can be too much for ourselves. And then when we look at something that we want to do, we're like, okay, that's more for a Thursday. I don't really particularly feel like it. And so I'm more like that as well with, you know, whether I'm wearing a kurta or something. Sometimes I do feel a little bit more self-conscious maybe on that particular day versus the next day. I don't even care. So it's always a work in progress. I don't always feel, you know, up to taking my culture up, you know, by storm. But most days I do, and then other days I'm just like everyone else. I just want to feel like I'm blending in a little bit more and just becoming a part of the crowd. So I think everyone's like that.
100%. 100%. That's so fair. And me too. I do want to talk about your amazing content creation, everything that you do on social media, but I forgot that there was a huge part of your life story we completely missed out on, which was your trip to India, which you took a couple years ago, if I'm correct. You one trip. Yeah, let's hear about that. And how, I'm assuming that was the first time you went since you were adopted, right? So that would have been a huge, like, I suppose, maybe culture shock. What did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, so I went to India in 2020 in January, and that was literally the 2 days before I came back to Melbourne. Coronavirus came to India. So I was in India when coronavirus landed. Like a bitch, it landed like a plane. And my mummy was like, Ross, like, get out of there, like the coronavirus. And at that time, nobody even knew what it was. Like, we were just like, coronavirus, what's that? And so when I went, okay, so I just thought it was such a spontaneous trip too. So always wanted to go back to India, always. And the last time I went was in 2007 when we adopted my sister. So that was the last time I had been. And so I've always wanted to go back. And so I was planning on going, but then all of a sudden I just had something in me. It was like, I want to go. Like, I'm just going to drop everything I'm doing and I'm going to go. So I got my mom to help me book the flight, help me with everything. And as a gift from both my mom and her husband, we were able to put some stuff together, and it became my 21st birthday gift. So it was really, really special. And it was really, really awesome. So I felt so great and grateful that I was able to have that gift, because they both knew how much it meant to me, especially my mum. So I booked the flight and I went to India. Now, looking at India from like the Western lens, because we all tend to do that with our own countries, if we're an immigrant or if we come from a diaspora, I thought that I knew quite a bit. But when I went there, it was so, so different to actually standing on the soil of the motherland and actually experiencing it firsthand. It is very different. So don't get it twisted. Like, I was thinking this, and this, and then I get there, I'm like, oh my God, it was literally nothing like I expected. So I got there and it was quite like, I don't how to put it. I think it's becoming so modernized, and I was not expecting it to be so modernized. And I did watch a lot of videos, obviously, of like young, Desi bloggers and stuff like that talking about their cities. And I knew that there was developed and everything in Mumbai, but I didn't know to what extent. And so it's definitely coming up. It is so insane how there is so much going on. And I felt so overwhelmed on the first day because everything was just happening all at once and I couldn't sleep. Because you know how you get jet lagged? I stayed up all day. Like I got to India and I stayed up all day. I did not want to miss a beat. I went out to the bay shore area thing there, and I think it was called Marina Pier or something. I can't even remember. I'm terrible with locations and I'm terrible with geography. But it's one of those landmarks there in Mumbai. And I went there with my friends and everything. And I was just like, oh my God, this is like crazy. I'm actually standing here like by myself with like people I've never met before. Like it was really, really surreal. And it didn't hit me until the third day. And I was like, okay, now I actually feel like I'm here. Because you know when you have those daydream kind of feelings that you feel like you're not actually awake? I had that for the past 2 days of being there. And then I fully woke up by the third day. It was so amazing. And I love that, there were women walking around and they were doing their own thing. And it was really great that people were talking to one another. I did notice, however, though, there was a lot more, I mean, it goes without saying, but there was a lot more men on the streets than there were women. And I did point that out to one of my friends, and he's also a boy, and he didn't notice it until I brought it up. He actually he wasn't conscious of it. And it's like, oh yeah, you're actually right. I think because I'm coming from the Western lens, we see so many women able to be having that ability to just go out and do what they want without having these rules set upon them. And when I was in Mumbai, I was surprised of like, even it being so quite liberal in comparison to the whole of India, it was, like I was still shocked that there was still not as many women as there were men. And so that took me by surprise. And then just the whole cultural exchange, like people knew that I wasn't obviously a local, no matter how much I look Indian. It's so strange because it's almost like you're a foreigner within your own culture. It's so strange, isn't it, Adi? I don't know if you can relate to that, but it was just so weird. I was like, why do I feel so foreign?
100%. I feel the same way when I'm in Sri Lanka. Like it's exactly the same. It's really funny. Like I'll be walking down the street and I just want to blend in because when you're a woman walking down the street in a South Asian country, you attract a lot of attention. And even attention from other women. They just tend to, I feel like South Asian culture, especially the older generation, they feel like they have a right to judge you. And so there's this thing where personal boundaries don't exist and they can just stare you down. And staring in Western culture is considered impolite, whereas in South Asian culture, there's nothing like that. So when you're walking down a street, especially as a woman, you tend to be stared down a lot. And my gosh, I try so hard to dress and just look the part just so that won't happen. But no matter what you do, you somehow just stand out because it's like they can smell the foreignness off of you, like the whitewashing off of you. And it's really funny because I asked this hairdresser, because she just guessed it. She was like, oh, are you from Australia? And I was like, how do you know that? How does everyone know that? I was like, can someone please explain to me why? And she was like, it's your skin. You have like elasticy skin and it doesn't look like it's like been burnt by like the hot Asian sun. I'm like, oh, maybe it's a skin thing. Maybe it's the way I dress. Okay. But yeah, it is a really strange sensation to feel like a foreigner within your own culture. Weird. And again, it puts you back in that whole dilemma of like not feeling brown enough, not feeling white enough, not feeling like anything enough. Lots of intracultural discrimination there, like our own culture discriminating on our own culture. But
exactly. And the most epic thing was the LGBT Pride event. I really loved being a part of that, and I'm really privileged that I know a lovely person who runs a lot of those functions and those events within India. And she happens to be a lovely acquaintance of mine. And, you know, the fact that she is so vocal about expressing herself, but also elevating and embracing other people in the community, young people, to voice their opinions and to allow them to be themselves and everything. It's such a great, great thing to see. And that for me made me feel the most out of my body experience, because I honestly, truly was so inspired by every single young person. It almost made me emotional because I was like, well, I walk around in Melbourne and not even think twice about going about my day. But these young people in India who live in such a restrictive kind of cultural, societal environment, they still have a smile on their face and they still seem to not let it stop them and bring them down. And I love that. It was so inspiring to me. And I told all my friends that. I said, you guys are literally so incredibly brave, you know, to be able to go out there, wear makeup, wear heels, be flamboyant the way you want to express yourself, and still, despite all the judgments, despite all the stares, despite all the criticism, you still go out there and you are happy to be yourself. And I honestly told that to all of them, to their face, because I was truly so inspired. And it's so incredible, and it was humbling. And I felt that for me checked my privilege. I noticed then in that moment that I was like, wow, I'm incredibly lucky and I'm incredibly privileged that I get to have the life that I do, and without any barriers. And my friends in India do everything they can to be themselves, and despite everything that they have to go through on a regular or daily basis. So that's what I found the most humbling from my whole experience of being in India.
That's so beautiful. And how lucky are you to go back and visit the motherland, you know? Like, so many people I know, even that, you know, aren't even adopted, have not even gone once. So to be able to do that before all of this silly coronavirus stuff has happened and wrecked the traveling of the world, that's really, really lucky of you. Last question is just about your amazing content creation. If you have not checked out Rosh's Instagram, it is at Desi Boy, so DESIBOY. I totally screwed that up. I'm sorry. It's incredible. Like, you do so well. I know you've already told me that you are a qualified makeup artist and photographer, and damn, it really shows. Like, your images are always just flawless, spick and span, lighting. The way you market yourself, it's so very impressive. Can you tell me what your message is as a content creator? What's the message you want to bring out there?
Yes. Well, for me, and it's for all of us, you know, I always make sure that I do my content very, very specific to the majority of the South Asian community, because that's when I go into my insights, that is who is majority looking at my content. So I make sure that it's appropriate, that it's there is no vulgar or anything. I'm almost very PG rated. I try and be very appropriate on my profile for those younger viewers, but also I don't want my branding or my content to be about anything else other than letting young people know that if I can do it, you can do it. And it sounds so cliche, but it truly is the truth. And also the fact that allowing young people to see themselves reflected in the way that some of these young kids would wish to see themselves as, or to be able to be allowed to express themselves in, but not have the opportunity. And so, you know, having my content be created so specifically to that demographic of people, you know, gives me a lot of confidence knowing that, you know what, I'm giving hope, but I'm also allowing young people to go out there for themselves and create what they want to create. And in the last, I would say in the past 2 to 3 years, I've seen an uprise and serious boom in the South Asian community in terms of creativity. And it's absolutely sensational. When I started in 2014, there was barely anyone doing it. And now it's just blown the heck up, and I'm absolutely obsessed with it. And, you know, it sounds so strange, but like I'm also a part of that. You are also, Adia, a part of that ever growing and ever changing and evolving community of young creative people in the South Asian diaspora and people living in the motherland. Because, you know, we don't see a lot of creative things embraced in our communities. It's not highly sought after. It's not something that people want to admit that they like doing, because obviously academia is a lot more preferred over creative arts of any sort. And you do dancing, you do acting, you do theater, you do everything that literally aunties in the motherland would be like, oh, what are you doing this for? You should be a doctor, you should be a lawyer, you should be an engineer. And you are literally like, hell no, I'm gonna do my thing. I'm just gonna be me. And that's what I find inspiring as well, because you just go out there and do it. And because we live in Australia, I think it's fantastic that you also are a part of that ever growing and, you know, demanding, you know, era of young people of color demanding to be seen and also represented on the Australian television and media. So you being a part of that, all those different sort of creative mediums is allowing other brown people to see themselves and be like, oh, I could do that as well. Like, yes, I'll just do this law degree just to please my parents, but then also I can succeed at becoming a dancer. I can succeed at becoming a actor if I want to. And so, and you know, in my situation, I'm a very creative person. So being a photographer and also a makeup artist, it's just, again, something that is not seen or heard of a lot in our community. So we're all doing something to chip away at those old traditions. And that doesn't mean to say that we want to erase our culture. No, we just want to evolve it into something that is more inclusive and more inviting to everyone, because not everyone that is brown is good at maths. I'm awful at maths. I can't add up. It's just the thing. I'm not good at science. And just because we're Asian, quote unquote, does not mean to say we have high skills in academia of anything. Everyone in the community is different, and some are great at academia and others are not as great. So you got to give people slack where, you know, their strong suits are in other areas.
Oh, so well said. And thank you for that beautiful, lovely compliment. That was very, very appreciate that.
It was the truth.
Aww. And you know what? It's so true. Like, if we want representation, if you listening to this want representation, then you better do something about it, you know? Like, do something to change, like, be the change you wish to see in the world. That's from Gandhi, one of us, one of our people.
Oh my God.
And I love the idea of us being, you know, influencers. It's sort of like, I'm just making up an analogy right now, but we're sort of like mirrors, really, to young South Asian people that come across Brown Paint and Desi Boy on Instagram or podcasts or whatever, and just think, oh, that could be me, you know? And that's so powerful. And I think that is a key factor in helping representation, because when you see someone that's doing something that is within your wildest dreams, then you all of a sudden have proof that it might work out for you. And for people like you and I, Rosh, we didn't have much proof growing up. We didn't have proof. And so the momentum that it took for us to start these creative careers that we're pursuing now takes twice as much momentum and energy and effort that it would someone seeing our profiles today and having that proof and starting a career based on that. So we've done the hard yards here. And
yes,
hopefully
that's
the next
100%.
generation can follow. Yeah.
Yes.
What advice would you give to young people that look up to you and want to follow a similar path in terms of being an influencer online in the social media realm?
Yeah. Honestly, I would just say, like, for me anyway, as well, like, just make sure that you always have a backup plan in anything you want to do. Make sure you've got a plan B, because no matter how hard you work and how successful you become, everything can come to an end. And it sounds so dramatic, but it truly is the truth. So just make sure, especially with social media, it can be so fickle. It can be so, you know, with this whole, meme culture, or with this whole viral culture, you're in the spotlight for a second and then you're gone, and then where are you then, so make sure that if you're making something, it is something that's going to be concrete and substantial, that it's going to be everlasting, I suppose, something that is always needing in the market. If you see a niche that is not so big yet, and you think that you could really benefit or profit off of or create something out of it, do it, and you could be the starting change of that particular niche, and then you're the empire of that particular community, I suppose. Like the gaming community, for instance, gaming obviously is worldwide loved, but YouTuber like PewDiePie, he obviously cultivated that whole concept of videoing yourself while playing a video game, and everyone after him wanted to be a part of that community and cultivate that and be that driving force that, oh, you should do this as well because it's fun, and then, hey, slip in a bit of a job in there aspect of it as well, because that's what it's become a business. So I suppose if you can find something in your avenue or of interest, just continue to do the things that you love. Make sure that your motivation is positive. Don't let social media and its toxic stuff get in the way of your true mission, which is obviously to be creative and create. I have moments where I compare myself a lot on social media. That's why I went off social media for 2 months. I needed a cleanse. It's okay to take a break off social media too, as well as enjoying it. We've also got to have a break from it. So yeah, I would just say continue creating what you love and just don't give up so easily. It is hard work. You're not going to become successful overnight. And if you do, make sure that it's everlasting, because, it just goes by so quick. You either work hard at it as long as we have, or you've got it there in 5 minutes of fame, and then you're like gone in like a week or something. So that's just how the industry is. So you just have to focus on what you want and go for it. And you know what, people forget that, like, people say, oh, like becoming a doctor or a lawyer is like so hard work and you got to study for years and everything. But also what we do in the creative space is just so damn hard, and it's never nearly as appreciated or valued as what everyone else does in those fields. Like being a dancer is incredibly hard. I did dance, I would know. Adi does dancing. She's a professional dancer. She does it as her passion, her career, her hobby. And I just think people forget how much time, effort, and money and resources go into those sort of creative avenues. And it's always unappreciated and invalidated. And people keep saying it's not a real career. It is a real career. How do you think people on TV become on TV? Because they're fantastic at what they do. They're not just actors because they're born acting. Like, I don't understand how that works. We can appreciate and appropriate these people and their craft, but we don't embrace it when our own children want to do those things or be those things. I don't understand. We'll buy their movies and stuff, but it's like, oh, but my kid won't be doing that. Half those actors, if they do become successful, earn more money than becoming a doctor or a lawyer anyway. So if you're all about that money, then you should be letting your kids do these fields, because they can actually become very, very successful. And I hate the fact that also that becoming a doctor is guaranteed. Just because you study a course, it is not guaranteed that you're going to become a fantastic doctor. Same with becoming a lawyer or an engineer. So we have to change our mindset, especially in our community. Nothing is guaranteed just because it's academic.
Oh my gosh, that was unbelievable. Cherry.
Beat the truth.
Drop the mic, Rosh.
Drop the mic.
Drop that mic. I was like screaming. I was on mute, but I was screaming. And I was like, heck yes. Everything you said, so well articulated. I could not emphasize that more. Oh my goodness. Oh, before I end this podcast, I just want to say congratulations on 10K. Oh my gosh, 10K. Rosh just made it to 10K on his Instagram at Desi Boy. And that is so well deserved. And just the quality of the value that you provide through your content, so well deserved. You work so hard for this, and damn right. Yes, you do. Yes, you get it.
Thank
How does
you.
that feel?
It feels great. And, you know, obviously, I've been doing this Instagram. I call it Instagram thing. Other people call it every other thing, but I just call it a thing. I don't know why. So this Instagram thing since 2014, and so like working so hard on building this platform and also creating content and making a brand and all that. I mean, it's so much fun, but at the same time, it's incredibly hard work and time consuming, as you would know. And so, you know, getting to this number is obviously a great milestone, but also I don't let it consume me either. You know, it is a wonderful thing and it's a great figure to look at. But if you don't keep working hard at it, it'll end up meaning nothing. So I think it's wonderful that so many people can, in some ways or many ways, resonate with what I do with my content. I don't necessarily want them to feel like they have to idolize me or want to be like me. It's focus on the content, always focus on the message is of the work that I do, and that is what I'm hoping that people get out of what I do on social media. It's not to look at me and then want to emulate what I do, because I'm obviously not perfect. And a lot of what bugs me about a lot of social media people is like they want people to emulate their characters or their traits or everything, and it's like, well, people are different, you know. Make it about your art, make it about your content, and let people figure it out for themselves whether they want to, you know, take it on board and do with what they will, sort of thing. So same with my content. You know, if you love a makeup look, do it. Don't do it because I've done it. Do it because you want to do it. You know, that kind of thing. So yeah, as long as it inspires people and gets people out there to be creative, that's all I can ask for.
I love that. And you're so very modest. Another congratulations is in way though, because you just are about to be moving into your own apartment. So things are happening for you, Rush, like 10K, moving into your own apartment. You have
got a puppy.
He's the cute. Oh my gosh, congratulations on everything that you're doing. And I wish you nothing but the best for the journey that is to come. And yeah, we'll have to catch up soon and have a bit of a party.
I'll invite you over to the house. Woo! We'll have we'll have like a dance party 101. Well, like you and me, we'll do like an Instagram reel video and we can coordinate a dance routine.
Oh my
That's
God.
what we can do. You hear it live on Brown Paint.
Oh my God, you have to do it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm so excited. And like I'm so excited to do that with you because you're a phenomenal dancer. I love the way you dance. And so yeah, it'd be so much fun to collaborate with you on a video like that. But yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to be on your platform, be on your creative podcast. I think it's fantastic that you do this. You give brown people a safe space to be themselves, and you are doing so well. And I'm so proud of you with all your endeavors. And you know, obviously this, you know, you did this podcast on me, but I want to make sure that I'm letting you know that I'm super grateful and that I'm also proud of you just as much because you're my friend too. Okay, so just keep creating, being yourself. I can't wait to see you on the silver screen one day. That is what I'm hoping. I'm like, girl, when I see you on the IMAX 4K TV screen, I'm gonna be like, I know that bitch, and then everyone will be like, who? And then I'll be like, I know her. And then I'll show selfies of you and me together before you was famous. And oh, it'll be the whole thing. Can you tell I'm a fan of her?
Oh my gosh, we're fans of each other. That's so cute. Oh, thank you so much, Rosh. And thanks so much for just being so open and vulnerable and just, you know, diving really deep on your adopted story too. That was a lot, you know, so
yeah.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. And it's going to help someone listening out there. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Bye. Bye.